This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. It is the final day here at the 71st Annual Bilderberg Conference in Stockholm, Sweden. The delegates of the conference are now about to make their getaway. There's a number of cars here that are going to be transporting them to the airport any minute now. Of course, we're going to be here documenting all of the faces so as to get any discrepancies in the participants list. And today I'd also like to interview some of these journalists who came out to cover Bilderberg, because God knows there's not a whole heck of a lot of them these days, but these guys have been doing the good work, so we'll be speaking to them today as well, guys. So stay tuned for all that. Last night, after their boat ride to some fancy dinner, they came back on 3 large buses in a huge police entourage motorcade, and I managed to get a pretty good shot of all of them flowing out of the buses and back into the hotel. So that's a nice little clip that I can analyze later to see if we have any discrepancies in the participants list. We've got this table here, security escorts taken into their cars. Just saw Stacey Abrams hop into that car. Of course, the police presence is large as usual, and I gotta say, the police in Sweden have been very nice. Some of the nicest I've had to deal with. Making their getaway. There's Larry Summers, American economist and deeply involved with OpenAI. Confronted him at an airport once. He didn't like that. I showed you that in my last video. He's looking a little ragged these days, but that's what happens when you engage in this kind of stuff. Miss Anderson on her way out of here. Christia! So Christia Freeland just popped out. She ducked back behind the shade there once she noticed all the cameras. And here is Christia Freeland making her getaway. There she is. She just got into that car there. Absolute proof Christia Freeland was here. If anybody wants to argue that, I have the proof. I doubt it'll be on her official itinerary. We'll see. This is Oscar Stenstrom. He has pretty much been responsible for organizing this year's meeting. In fact, it was after seeing him at last year's meeting and knowing that he works for Jacob Wallenberg, which has made us what made us realize that the next meeting was going to be here in Stockholm. That was a dead giveaway, and sure enough, we were correct. Had a fantastic team of journalists covering it. I, on the other hand, am trying to stay a little bit in the shade, and I have a good shot from over here as well. It's a hot one today. Here's Marie-José Kravitz and her husband. He is, I believe he's the co-chair of the steering committee, or Marie-José Kravitz, the lady in black there, is the co-chair of the steering committee. These are the ones who decide who to invite, who to potentially recruit into the inner circle of the inner circle. Mr. and Mrs. Kravitz. Making their getaway after yet another Bilderberg. That's the Secretary General of NATO right there. Mark Rutte. And you've got the Secretary General of NATO meeting with prime ministers and kings and other military men and extremely influential people off the record. That's of grave concern, especially considering what's happening in the world with Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Iran. I do believe this guy's a member of the press who, of course, was on the inside. Think he's going to report on it? That looks like Teal's security guard. It's very possible Teal may be coming out soon. Let's see. Yeah. That's Mr. Jacob Wallenberg, the host of this year's event, the Swedish billionaire who's pretty much running the show around here for his family for the last 100 years. There he goes. That sure does look like Peter Thiel's bodyguard. There's the Minister of Finance for Finland, who I spoke with earlier. Interesting. They're still coming out, but the barriers are coming down. Hey, Matthias.
Can we get there? Hi.
Matthias. Peter Thiel, my clip of you is going viral because the people know what you're doing, pal.
Satan! Satan, evil, demon, pedophile!
Well, guys, that was Peter Thiel making his getaway. I had a lot of things I wanted to say to him. The fact that the people clearly want him confronted. You know, that clip is going viral. And I wanted to say, you've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your empire will be divided. But unfortunately, I got a little distracted by somebody yelling Satan at him. But honestly, that's quite understandable as well. So there you have it, Peter Thiel making his getaway. All right, guys, we're here now with my friend Frederico, who has been covering the Bilderberg group for a couple of years now, in person, that is. We first covered it together in Portugal, and then last year we were in Spain together. Now you're here with me once again in Sweden. So, Frederico, maybe you could start us off by telling us what made it so important for you to come all the way here to Sweden to cover Bilderberg. Why did you do it?
Well, actually, the thing is that when we first met there in Lisbon, then we knew next year would be, well, we didn't knew it quite exactly, but Madrid is 600 kilometers from Lisbon, so that's why we met in Lisbon. And then this year, when we start making our investigations, I found out that Stockholm would be the place, and it was confirmed. So it is very important for me to be also in Bilderberg. I've written some books about it, and I did a great research. The Portuguese have been there almost since the beginning, since 1956. That is 2 years after the foundation. We were still a dictatorship. We have a democracy, a young democracy, and our young democracy has been also under the Bilderberg command. Portugal has been member of NATO, also founding member of NATO in 1949, and still was a dictatorship. So it's very important for a Portuguese journalist to be where other Portuguese journalists don't go. If there would be more Portuguese journalists here, I would not be here. So therefore, I'm probably the only one in Portugal that speaks about Bilderberg.
And how do you compare this year's meeting to the last few? I remember in Spain and Portugal, the cops were a little bit heavy-handed, but they seem to be a little nicer here in Sweden. What else have you noticed about covering Bilderberg at Sweden?
I was very impressed positively, because it was a relaxed place here. Lisbon was also relaxed, but still tight security. Spain was much more tired. We didn't have too many chances of talking with some of the members and getting good pictures to testify that they were really present, which is very important. It's not the fact that you are able just to speak with them or make the confrontation, but it's the fact that you are able to see that it exists. They are here. They give their face, and here in Stockholm it was very nice. I think we covered almost all of them, especially when they went to the boat here in front of this beautiful canal with the royal palace on the other side, and the Wallenberg mansion, the palace of Wallenberg here. And as we ride in a taxi, and last night someone said he owns Sweden. So we were here in the place which is owned by the Swedish Wallenberg, with all the persons that he probably owns.
And I was surprised to see a protest of about 300 to 400 people show up. What do you think about that? Isn't that kind of remarkable for Sweden?
Yeah. It's I don't know exactly what's the length of other protests in Sweden. My first meeting in Bilderberg was in 2010 in Sitges, in Barcelona. There was a huge protest there, but there was also with other issues which were not quite present in the Bilderberg. So people were more there for other things. But this moment, people were here really for Bilderberg. They knew exactly why they were here, and 300 persons is amazing, because they say sometimes you get 10 or 13, now you got 300. Well, that's good. People are waking up, and the Swedish people that pass by are asking us, making questions. When the moment we talk with them, we explain what is happening here, they got very worried. And then little by little, that's how you do. That's why you need journalism. And people say, what is going on here? I say, you don't know what is going on here? No. That's why the journalist is doing a very good job. That's why you're not supposed to know. But yes, we are doing the best job that others are not doing. That's why we are explaining one by one to everyone that asks us what is going on here.
And that's why these guys cower and run like little cockroaches that just had the light turned on. I mean, Peter Thiel, just recently made his getaway. Who else of notable names do you think are here who people should know about?
Well, the responsible of Pfizer, for instance, he met with, I'm sadly to say, as a Portuguese, he met with a very important person, international, which is, by the way, Portuguese also. His name is Durão Barroso, and is the president of Gavi, which is the World Alliance for Vaccination. And when you start having a persons like that discussing with the General Secretary of NATO, Then, and especially one of the issues was depopulation. We had the chance to talk with Gideon Rachman, is a journalist from Financial Times, and he was answering to us as a journalist. He said, I asked him, what about depopulation in the agenda? And he says, oh, we are just seeing which country has more children, which country has less children. I said, can you can go to internet to see that. You can Google that. What is going on here exactly? It's so important for you to discuss. You want us to have more babies or less babies? Are we
More death or less?
or more death or less death? More vaccines or less vaccines? So more war or less war? So that's the questions that now must be asked by the others journalists who are not here, but we say we are the witness. They were here at the same time, at the same moment, in the same powwow, in the same meeting points, in the same summit, whatever you want to call it. It's not secretive, it's discreet, because the list is present. Our job is to show the world it is happening, and that's what we have to thank you. The world must be thankful for you and for me also, but I am thankful for meeting you, because I've seen your job for the years and years, and it is a privilege to be next to you in this mission.
Well, I must say, I hope to see you at the next year's meeting. I don't know if it will be in Canada or North America, perhaps, Austria, Finland.
Europe, or here in this place of Europe, more maybe Finland or Poland, who knows? Other places we will never know. But if we get the chance, there's the one over that side, Master. Don't worry. Okay, we have it on camera. So there will be a chance wherever, if we get time, because this is made with our own money in cases. You survive with donations. I also survive with some jobs that I have to do by the side, also along with the journalist jobs that I do. And we put all the money in it. And it's fun because I was talking with the policeman, and he says, I was identifying myself as a journalist, of course, and he says, who's paying this? So, man, what do you have to do with paying me? This is my job, okay? I don't ask you who's paying you. You are being paid by the state. You are protecting them. But it's funny because they are so worried who's paying this. You are paying. The people is paying to us. And we have a face. We show our face. We show our voice. We say what we think. You can go and you can see in the internet our job. And you are the ones who pay us.
Yeah, well said. And like you said, it's ridiculous a question here, because the more important question should be, why are you covering this? Why isn't the media covering this? And a lot of the police officers don't even understand what they're protecting here, right?
And I think it's also interesting that the most important persons in the world, there's a boat living out the canal. The most important persons in the world, they know us because we are the ones who take a picture. We are the ones who shout to them to say something. Peter Thiel knows who you are. So you are the most important journalist because you are the one that has the most important person of the world not giving you the answer. And it's just giving the answer to those journalists that are his master's voice. Yeah. And journalism is not his master's voice.
Well, I want to thank you again for making the trek all the way out here from Portugal to Sweden. Is there anywhere people should go online if they want to continue to hear more from you? There might be some people who speak Portuguese.
I'm on X, Frederico Duarte C27. You already got me tagged there, and also Facebook. So I can answer to anyone that sends me. Okay, I know I'm on those things. I also have my other contacts, but those are more private ones, of course. But the public ones are the normal public ones, you see. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I want to strongly encourage people to certainly check that out. I will include links in the description because, guys like myself and Frederico are few and far between these days, and that certainly needs to change. Come join us, guys. So, yeah, Frederico, thanks once again for taking the time to be.
Thank you very much. You.
All right, guys, we're here now with Josh Friedman. Josh has been covering Bilderberg for many, many years, just like me. We've covered a whole bunch of them together. So I guess we could start with, why did you think it was so important to come all the way out here to Sweden this year to cover Bilderberg?
Well, there's so many storylines, but if we go back to last year, after the 2024 conference, it was pretty notable who ended up rising to high office who had attended Bilderberg. So in your case, it didn't happen right away after the conference, but Mark Carney, who was a Bilderberg steering committee member, became Prime Minister of Canada, and then became the elected Prime Minister of Canada. And that was not the only case. There were instances like Kaja Kallas was Estonian Prime Minister last year. She went on to become the EU foreign policy chief, and more notably, who she was spotted having coffee with in Madrid last year. Then Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is now the head of NATO. So there are very close ties between Bilderberg and NATO. Some people like to refer to Bilderberg as an informal NATO summit, and that might be very fitting this year, being that Sweden is just over a year removed from formally joining NATO, and there are a lot of connections between both Sweden and Finland's accession to NATO over the past couple years and Bilderberg. Even some meetings have taken place, formal or informal, related to that during the accession process and after. So everything having to do with NATO and the general climate of the world, which changed as we were here. It didn't factor into my decision to come this year, but the Israel-Iran war, hot war, broke out after the meeting already started. But everything related to geopolitics and the military sphere and NATO certainly factors into why I'm interested in this event.
Yeah, what a great reason to come. I mean, when you got guys like Peter Thiel, who's, co-founded Palantir with Alex Karp, inside this building at the time that, this Israel-Iran war is happening is pretty wild. It looks like he left at one point, but maybe came back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there was a lot of rumor and speculation on the outside, but that does happen from time to time. A couple years ago in Lisbon, some of us on the outside had thought that Eric Schmidt had left the conference. Maybe he did briefly, but then he came back. But with Thiel and Karp, at least on the outside, it's a little more noticeable because they have, let's just say, a stronger security presence on the outside than other participants. And yeah, some might wonder or speculate that after the hot war between Israel and Iran broke out, could that mean that Karp and Thiel need to rush to a meeting in another country potentially? Do they need to go to a more secure location? I don't know, but there was a lot of buzz and speculation about that on the outside of the meeting.
You've been harassed. You've had police barge into your, room before, being detained multiple times. What was the experience like for you this time in Sweden? For me, honestly, the police seemed very, very friendly, pretty much with just about every encounter I've had. How about you?
I'd say, at least from our perspective on the outside, our vantage point, the event was run very professionally. Compared to last year, it was night and day difference. The Spanish policing of Bilderberg last year in Madrid was quite aggressive. That was not at all the case with Swedish policing. Granted, I was warned a few times, and as I'm interviewing or confronting participants on the outside, and it's understandable. I had a few conversations with the police trying to strike that balance between my freedom as a journalist to question public figures, not just walk around in public with a camera, but question public figures walking around in public. And at what point might I be invading their privacy in accordance with Swedish or European law? I understand the perspective of the Swedish police. At no point did they stop me from doing my job, but I was warned a few times. And after a couple warnings, I tried to give a little more distance. But it was really remarkable how we could stand practically right here where we're standing, which is just across this narrow street from the entrance to the hotel, and film participants without having a gate shut in our face or without having a bunch of green fencing that we can't really see through. And the participants would walk up to us on the exterior of the enclosed area and go for walks. And everything just seemed more cordial, more relaxed, more professional, dare I say, this year compared to last year, in some cases in the past. Like I was there in Germany, in Dresden, where the police were very aggressive with you. It was not at all the case this year, though. Yes, there were some warnings that I was given.
Speaking of organized, I got to say, I was pretty surprised and impressed to see that 300 to 400 protesters showed up for an anti-Bilderberg protest in Sweden. Like, I was kind of shocked by that. What are your thoughts on just the protest movement here in Sweden and the amount of people who are apparently aware of Bilderberg?
I was not expecting that at all in terms of the protest. I was aware ahead of time that there was going to be some protests. There'd be some locals here on the outside or people from elsewhere in Sweden, but I was not there. So kudos to you. You got to deliver the keynote address, I believe. I watched it. Congratulations on your speech and your appearance there. But I was not expecting that at all. If I had to wager a bet beforehand, I would have guessed that there were like 20, maybe 20 people would show up. That was not at all the case. So I was very impressed, and actually that extends beyond the protest. There were Swedish mainstream press here at the beginning and Swedish alternative media and photographers here for almost the duration of the event. And on some evenings, they would stay till the very end in order to maybe on the first night photograph Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, who was here. But on other days or other evenings, when at least the sitting Swedish Prime Minister was not here, I'd still see them. So I was very impressed by the atmosphere here on the outside among members of the Swedish press and particularly Swedish alternative media. And yeah, you were there for that big protest.
Now, I know you can't predict the future or anything like that, but should this take place in North America, Europe, obviously one of the two next year, where do you think some of the potentials are? And would you be willing to come to Canada if it's going to be there?
I will definitely come to Canada if it's there. That's a possibility. Bilderberg has at times somewhat informally followed the rotation of every 4 years in North America. And it's been several rotations now since there's been an event in Canada. So Washington, D.C. or the D.C. area is definitely a possibility for next year. I guess Canada is a possibility. There's some rumbling and speculation on the outside that it might be elsewhere in the Nordics, potentially Finland, because Sweden has joined NATO and Finland has joined NATO. And there have been some interesting participants who have been coming. That's not necessarily a giveaway, although it arguably was with Oscar Stenstrom, who technically is not a participant, but we've now seen him a few years running. Stenstrom turned out to be an organizer for this year's event, as he now works for the Wallenberg family. I can't say, though, that there's a clear giveaway that it's going to be in any one of these countries next year. I think we have to do some digging. Maybe we can cultivate some sources. So too early to say, but there's been some buzz and speculation about it possibly being in a Nordic country next year. And it would very much make sense if it were to return to North America.
Well, we're going to stay on top of that and obviously, be there as soon as we figure out where it is. So I guess any final thoughts on just kind of your takeaway from the coverage this year, what people watching this, maybe who are hearing about this for the first time, or people who are maybe on the fence about getting involved in exposing Bilderberg. Just any thoughts on what people should take away from this particular meeting?
Well, if we were to take Gideon Rachman, the chief foreign affairs commentator for the Financial Times, at his word, and he was gracious enough to speak with me twice, once at the beginning of the event, once at the end, spoke with media at the end of the event. If we were to take him at his word, then Bilderberg 2025 was pretty regimented, and they in their panel discussions, their sessions, as some might call them, they didn't deviate from the topics list. That's according to Rachman. No one, as far as I'm aware, no one else has spoken about that publicly, at least not yet. Stefano Feltri, an Italian journalist, told me that he'd be writing on his Substack about this year's event, so I'll wait and stay tuned for that. But I think it's of particular interest whether there may have been some deviation from the topics this year, or at least the listed topics, because in the middle of the meeting, or shortly after the meeting started, the hot war between Israel and Iran broke out. So just one session or one single panel discussion on the Middle East? Does that make sense? Does that add up given the current circumstances in the world? Well, according to Mr. Rackman, that's all they spoke about it, although he did say that there were discussions in the hallways inside the Grand Hotel about the situation in the Middle East and what's going on between Israel and Iran. So read into that as you may. I know you, Dan, talk a lot about the informal meetings or discussions that you often say and you often argue that are more important than the structured panel discussions in there. So maybe. And you know what? It wasn't just on the inside. On the outside, there was a meeting between Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and Mark Rutte, now Secretary General of NATO. They had a formal NATO Sweden meeting shortly after the start of Bilderberg. So whether those discussions were taking place in an actual session in the hallways, or maybe on a boat, or maybe at the formal NATO meeting between Finland and the NATO leadership, between Sweden and the NATO leadership. They're clearly important discussions going on over the past several days, largely about military affairs and all things geopolitics.
Well, I got to say, you did a fantastic job on getting some of these guys to actually open up, be a little bit more candid than they're supposed to be, and to give us a little bit of information. So why don't you tell people where they can watch all of this from you if they're not familiar with your work?
You can find me on X at Freeman Reporter and on YouTube, Josh Friedman.
Guys, make sure you check those links in the description below. Follow Josh. He's been covering this for a long time, and I'm certain we're going to be there on the front lines again next year. So make sure you're following so you don't miss out. Thanks again for breaking this down for us.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, guys, we're now here with Joseph Philip Daniel, a man who I just met at this particular Bilderberg conference. This is your first time covering this one. So why don't you start us off by telling us, what made you want to come all the way out to Sweden to cover Bilderberg for your first time?
I was first awakened by God back in 2013 to the Bilderberg cult through Alex Jones. And since then, I've been tracking them off and on for years. And finally, this was the year that God released me to come, partly to cover this, but partly to make an impact here for Sweden for his glory.
That's fantastic. I mean, you managed to confront a few of these guys. Who are some of the notable names you got a chance to speak with?
The biggest one this year was none other than Eric Schmidt, one of the most evil people on the planet and one of the progenitors that Satan has on the earth to bring forth his AI God system. And some believe he will bring in the image of the beast system that will be deployed at some point in the future where you won't be able to have your own belief system and God's using the Holy Spirit or some other deity, but you will have to worship the beast, just like it's written in the book of Revelation. Now, he was here, and I confronted him, and I confronted another Google guy close to here as well. So that was great.
So you've been getting a lot of views with a lot of these videos online. I mean, it seems a lot of people want to hear this message that, the spiritual side of this. So tell us a little bit about that journey and what that's been like for you, exposing the global elite, but specifically the spiritual warfare aspect of it.
So many people came and asked what was going on here in this hotel for the last 3 days to me. It was incredible. And I got to tell so many of them that literally on the BilderbergMeetings.org website that you can pull up right now, there is a part about depopulation right there. So I know for sure, that not only are they not even hiding the fact that they want to kill most of the world off for their god, Satan, but I can literally just go to the website and figure it out and show people that that's one of the main things that they have in their agenda, depopulation. It's incredible.
Now, this isn't your first time at the rodeo. You've done Davos, I believe. You might be going to Bohemian Grove soon. What else? What other kind of stuff can people expect if they check out your Twitter?
Next month, I plan on standing at the entryway of that Bohemian Grove cult entrance in middle of California or maybe in Northern California. I've been by there before, but I plan on being there with a camera and exposing the treachery that is the Bohemian Grove cult.
I got to say, I was really surprised to see like 300 to 400 protesters show up here in Sweden. Like that's just a phenomenal turnout. Just the fact that many people have even heard of Bilderberg here is pretty impressive. What are your thoughts on that?
That was great to see Swedish flags out the other day here, and it seemed like there were over 1,000 people that showed up, and your speech was phenomenal. It was incredible.
I appreciate that. So what would you like to see come out of this kind of stuff? I mean, this is your first time covering it. I'm sure I'll probably see you again, hopefully. I don't know if you have intentions of coming to Bilderberg next year, but what would you like to see come of this type of coverage?
Donald Trump, the president of the United States, which I'm a part of, needs to come out and really put his foot down and stand up to the global elites big time and in a very public way to scare them. And that's the bare minimum that should happen at least this month at some point. So hopefully that can happen at some point under his administration, where they actually put out an official White House statement on depopulation, how wrong it is.
What do you think they mean by depopulation? Because obviously the question is, do they want to increase it or do they want to decrease it?
There was only one man, one Bilderberger this year who even talked about that out in front of the Grand Hotel, and that was the Financial Times guy, the fake news guy. Gideon is his first name. I don't know his last name. He's from England. And he just gave a sanitized version of what they're really planning on doing. I know what they're planning on doing because I've seen the Georgia Guidestones. And on the Georgia Guidestone that had maintained the world's population of 500 million, it's right there for people to see. Not only do they want to kill billions of us, they want to kill so much of us that there's only about 500 million of us left. It's insane.
Yeah. So what would be your kind of main message to people watching right now? Like what should be the major takeaway here, or at least what's the main message you want to bring to the Bilderbergers as well?
My main message to the audience is get closer to God, to Jesus, and to the Holy Spirit, and follow them and see what they want you to do in your life. Because at the end of the day, we're in a spiritual war, and Peter Thiel and other globalists who have shown up here, like Albert Bourla, the mass murderer CEO of Pfizer, they're into Satanism. It's clear they're into Satan and they are in a death cult. And the only way to counteract that is to be a force for God, a force for righteousness, a force for good.
Right. So you're kind of here on behalf of doing the good Lord's work to bring the message to what you would describe as, a bunch of Satanists meeting here to tell them to turn from their wicked ways, right?
Literally behind the Grand Hotel where the Bilderberg conference happened this year, there's a giant Masonic lodge. I mean, it's right behind it. It's insane.
So if people are interested in checking out your X or anywhere else that they want to follow you, where should be the best places for them to go?
Follow me on X. It's the best platform of all the big platforms out there. And my tag on there, or my handle, is at Joseph P. Daniel 1. Joseph P. Daniel 1.
Any final thoughts or final words you want to say to the audience in regards to this spiritual warfare that we're engaged in, and you and I are currently on the front lines of?
It's an honor to follow you, God, in this time, and we may live in the time of the mark of the beast system written about in the book of Revelation being in manifestation on the earth, and I'm willing to die for Jesus and never get the 666 mark of the beast. Never will I get what? Never.
Well said, man. I just want to thank you for having the bravery and courage to come out here for your first time. I really hope that we'll see you at these other ones, maybe in Canada next year. Who knows? But I want to strongly encourage everybody to check out those links in the description. Give him a follow, and stay tuned to his work, because he's doing the Lord's work here, and it's fantastic to see. So thanks for doing what you're doing, man.
You're amazing. I plan on being at every Bilderberg event with you that you go to for the rest of our lives.
Sounds great, man. So stay tuned for our coverage coming next year from the Bilderberg conference in 2026. Thanks, man.
You're awesome.
All right, everyone. That's going to pretty much do it for my coverage of the 71st annual Bilderberg conference here in Stockholm, Sweden. It's been quite a week of coverage. You never really know what you're going to get when you come to cover these types of events. I could get a whole bunch of great stuff. I could get absolutely nothing, but you don't really know unless you try. And I got to say, I am so grateful and thankful to everybody who has contributed to the Go Get Funding campaign and who has contributed at pressfortruth.ca/donate. I simply cannot do this kind of work without the support and help that comes from you guys, directly from you, the viewers. So I'm so thankful for anybody who has done that, because on the inside of this place, you've got Bloomberg, you've got The Atlantic, you've got The Economist. From what I was counting, I think there's somewhere around 25 to 26 different press who was on the inside. They're under strict Chatham House rules, so you are not going to get any reporting coming from them. That's for sure. And that's why it's important for guys like me to be here, to be on the front lines, and to try to bring you the truth of what's actually happening at these meetings. Because as I said, there's been a complete media blackout on it. And this is literally the only way. It's literally the only way. So I really look forward to continuing my coverage. This marks my 19th year of Bilderberg. Next year will be 2 decades of covering Bilderberg, if you can believe that, guys. So again, thank you so much to everybody who has been with me all along on this crazy, crazy journey. If you have yet to contribute to the GoFunding campaign or my pressfortruth.ca/donate, please check that top link in the description below. If you do